Hello friends, thank you for joining me today for Daily Art Adventure 451. I've been absent for 2 weeks. It's crazy. I am well, thank you for several of you who contacted me and asked me if I was okay. I appreciate that. It's nice to be missed. I am perfectly fine. It's been just a whole bunch of funny little things, odd little things happening here and there. So I just enjoyed, if you will, my first vacation from Daily Art Adventure in a year and a half. So maybe that's it. Every year and a half I'll take a couple weeks off. How about that? I hope I really don't do that. I am working in my studio on a commission piece. I started this yesterday, 36 by 48, back to the size I used to do 4, 5, 6 years ago. It seems to me I did tons of 36 by 48 for some reason. And I think the question is, why am I not doing it? And it just has to do with what sells. I love painting this large. This is a painting of Durham Bulls Stadium, and did a watercolor sketch for my client. My client is the office that resides in this building right up here. And I'm going to make sure that I get their signage legible. And I've done probably 5 layers on this painting so far, so I'm ready to go with layer number 6. And I'm going to go with, the last thing I did was dark details in acrylics, so kind of a mauve-y, purple, blue, purple down here, some phthalo blue. That's the last thing I did. What I'm doing right now is some more big brush glazes, and I'm noticing that I'm liking this hot yellow stripe. That was, of course, one of the very first strokes that I put on the painting yesterday when I started. You've seen, if you follow me, you know what I mean. I do these big abstract marks, and yellow is a little unusual for me, but I find I'm really liking it, and I'm experimenting right now. I'm thinking, okay, so I like that. Why don't I go ahead and just do some more right now, sort of as echoing, if you will, echoing the kind of stuff that I do at the very, very beginning of my painting process. One of the ways I've described this, now this area down here, I'm going to do this all yellow because that's going to be a hot green field. You see that? So instead of doing that in green, I'm going to go ahead and do that in 2 colors, yellow and blue. And no, I do not want this yellow here. Well, a little bit's okay. So again, this is an experiment, trying something new, where I'm doing streaks or strokes, which is the best word? Streaks of energy going through the painting. Now, while that's still wet, I think I can come in here and do some related strokes in orange. And again, this is related to the color that the sky will be. While I'm at it, though, there's a bunch of local color right in here. You know, you have the orange brick with sun shining on it, so there's quite a bit of orange. Now, this whole building is orange over here. But then now I just lost this yellow stripe that I like so much, did I? There, came back and actually did that yellow stripe one more time. So this whole scene, of course, is bathed in evening sunlight. So very, very warm glow. So I feel pretty confident doing lots of orange and some yellow. Last week I was teaching a class in Wilson, North Carolina. And the week before that I was teaching a class in Hickory, North Carolina. And in both cases I expected to be broadcasting, and things developed that made it difficult to do that. So that's the part of the reason you haven't heard from me much, is it turned out broadcasting in both those classes was a little bit difficult, so I wasn't able to do it. I learned something last week, and what I really mean is this is something that I've known intuitively for a long time, but there's a big, especially for a teacher, there's a big transference that happens when you're able to, I'm pointing at my heart, when you're able to get something that is intuitive and to express it in words clearly and make it didactic, that you can actually teach it. So here it is. In the world of transparent color. You with me? So again, this applies to watercolor, and it applies to transparent oil or transparent acrylic. There are several things that are different about painting in transparent color that if you're not used to it, you need to learn. There's a learning curve. One of the first, and I remember learning this 30 years ago, when I pursued Maxfield Parrish for a number of years. He was my favorite illustrator and my muse, the artist whose work I was chose to influence myself. So I learned some of this. In the world of transparent, for instance, there is no red. So you do not use fire engine red. You use magenta. I've talked about that quite a bit. Here's the thing that I've never put into words before. In the world of transparent color, yellow, transparent yellow, which by the way is often opaque, so you have to watch out. Yellow by itself is opaque. You have to add more medium to the yellow. But in the transparent yellow gets colder, cooler when you spread it out. In other words, if you mix up some yellow in opaque, yellow, opaque, and put it on the canvas, it's the same color on the canvas that it was here on the palette when you're mixing opaque yellow. However, when you take transparent yellow and spread it out, it gets cooler, not warmer. So you could take, for instance, this orange that looks quite orange, does it not? When it looks quite orange in the container, when you spread it out, it gets quite a bit cooler. And this yellow, which is a medium warm yellow, when spread out becomes a very cool yellow, leaning towards chartreuse. So that's part of the reason why my students often have little bits of trouble learning how to paint in transparent colors. That is one of the things that trips them up, is their yellow goes cold on them. Now again, I'm not going to repeat. Yes, some of you are saying, I thought yellow was warm. No. There's warm yellow, warm red, warm blue, cool blue. And I talked about that enough. I'm not going to repeat it all here. Again, I've repeated it enough times, I think. So keep that in mind when you're spreading out, when you're spreading a transparent yellow, it's going to be cooler on the canvas than it is, so to speak, on your palette. I'm doing that right now, a chartreuse. I've got yellow on the brain. This is most certainly not chartreuse. I'm doing. That's so funny. I'm doing a phthalo blue. Good. The yellow that I put there a little while ago is dry enough that I'm not completely obliterating it with this blue, which I'm glad for because I don't want it obliterated. Now I'm doing a phthalo blue on top of that yellow I did a little while ago because I'm aiming for a very, very bright or intense green for the grass. I mean, that's part of what makes going to a live baseball game so much fun. Is the color of the grass. I laugh at myself because I remember thinking that as a kid, going to a Detroit Tigers baseball game. I grew up in Michigan, and I remember just being dazzled by the color of the field And now that I look back with my adult mind, I'm thinking, yeah, I was probably a weird kid. I didn't realize that not everybody was as enthralled by the color of the field as perhaps I was. Others were actually paying attention to, no, I was paying attention to baseball, I promise. But anyway, looking back on my childish self, I still love going to sports, football counts too, because of simply the color of the field. So that's part of what's working here. Okay, I think I can start painting now. White. Hopefully my last layer of white. Now, I learned something else. You learn a lot when you teach. That is part of the reason I teach, and it's part of the reason why, forgive me, scratch itchy nose, it is part of the reason why I teach on YouTube all the time, is because you learn things. The teacher learns more than the pupil. Here's one of the things I learned. So let me try to state this carefully. Again, this just pertains to my approach, Dan Nelson's technique, Dan Nelson's style of painting. Okay, that's what we're talking. That's the subject here. And every time I teach a class, I always tell them, the students. Now, of course, my way of painting is the only right way, until the minute after my class ends. Then you can chuck it all and paint any way you want to for the rest of your life. But while I'm teaching the class, my way is the only way. So if you want to paint the way I paint, I discovered I was misguiding some people, because I've been saying here lately that it's legal, so to speak. You can paint white paint into wet glazes. You with me? This is all still quite wet, but it's legal for me, so to speak, quote unquote legal. I'm using that terminology as a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's okay to paint white into wet. But then what I discovered, so to speak, to my horror, you know what I mean, being funny, what I discovered is that students were then taking their white paint and slathering it up with a whole bunch of wet paint, and proceeding to paint opaque color. So let me try to be really clear here. No. You do not. It is okay to paint white into wet. Okay, but that does not mean you allow your white paint to pick up a whole bunch of the wet paint and then proceed to paint opaquely. Now, again, this only pertains to those of you who are trying to paint like me, or who, I don't mean that egotistically, that sounds awfully arrogant, but those who want to be influenced, you want to try my approach a little bit. Okay, so make sure you understand that it's okay to paint. In fact, not only is it okay, I think there's actually a real advantage artistically in painting wet into white. Catch that? Wet into white. White into wet. That's what I mean. White into wet. There's but. That doesn't mean you pick up all that wet stuff underneath and just start slathering opaque paint all over the place. So as I again said in one of my classes I think it was last week, in my world, in the world of this crazy approach to painting, and I make no apologies for the fact that my approach to painting is weird. I like it, but it's unusual. Anyway, in my world of painting, opaque color is the enemy, so to speak. all of us who are painting like me, we are into transparent color. Transparent is our friend. Opaque is our enemy. Until, of course, the very last two layers, the fuzz layer and the final edit layer. Then, all of a sudden, we have a softening of heart. And at that point, then opaque color becomes our friend. Okay, but in all 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 layers of underpainting, and all those layers of underpainting, no, nothing. There is no opaque color. Okay, so I beat that dog to death, didn't I? I'll just let the rest of that go. So I think this is going to be my last layer of acrylic. Again, this is Durham Bulls Stadium. Somebody told me the other day, just yesterday I think, because I had mentioned I was doing this painting, and somebody said, I don't know if this is true, but somebody seemed to know what they were talking about, said that the Durham Bulls Stadium is regarded as the finest stadium in the minor leagues. It's a AAA ball club, of course, made partly famous by Kevin Costner, I think, in Bull Durham movie 30 years ago or 25 years ago, something like that. 20 years ago, I don't know, long time ago. Bull Durham, based on this ball club here. So this is the Durham Bulls Stadium. I went and got permission, of course, to get in while the stadium was empty, and ran all over the place, literally ran all over the place, and took pictures of the stadium. The most iconic aspect of the stadium is this big billboard size bull cutout, and I've made it actually slightly larger in my painting than it should be, simply because I want to make sure, I want to emphasize it just a little bit more. Again, that's the kind of quote-unquote mistake that's legal. I don't think really anybody, except perhaps if a fellow artist was critiquing me, nobody will look at this and say, isn't that bull a little big? I don't think they'll say that. They'll just recognize the bull and say, oh yeah, there's the bull, the famous Durham bull. I have no idea why this team is called the Bulls. No idea whatsoever. Why are the Detroit Tigers called the Tigers? So on and so on and so forth, eh? You and I weren't there when they made up the name. All those names. Back in the 19th century somewhere. Many of them. Of course, when I was there taking pictures, there were no baseball players on the field, so I'm just putting players on the field based on my knowledge of baseball, which is certainly enough, I think, to have all the people in the right position. Runner on first. That's all. Nothing else happening. Pitchers standing on the mound. Okay, and this, I do wish I had a photograph of the stands full of people. That would be a lot more fun than just having to make it up, but that's all right. I've painted, I think, enough crowds of people. I should be able to fake that all right. Yeah. Yeah. Getting there. Happy with that. Also, while I was at the stadium, here's the photograph again. It was a gray, overcast day, and it was about high noon. So I am not using... Hey, Larkin. Glad I caught your comment, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm not using this lighting at all. In fact, even before I went and took the photographs at the Durham Bulls Stadium, I know we're looking north. This way is north, east is that way. Sun setting to our left. So I determined. I think it was a good decision. I decided that the best lighting for this, hang on a second, let me look for stadium lights. Here we go. The best lighting would be late afternoon or evening sun, where the grandstands are casting a large shadow right across the field, middle of the field, right across the middle of the painting. I feel like it is in fact this angle, this line at an angle that more than anything else creates a dramatic and interesting composition in the painting. So that's completely made up, and I think it's turning out to be a good decision to have that angle right there, very prominent. Now, this building up here, I'm also taking a few liberties with this building. I'm truncating it a little bit, squeezed it this way, which I've discovered, for better or worse, is very common for me in my architectural work. Sometimes I wonder if that impulse is that a mistake? Is it just because I'm messing up that I'm making the buildings? And the answer is yes. It's a mistake that I crunch my buildings. But usually, when I think about it, I usually think that it's a wise mistake. It's a good mistake to make. Because certain shapes are, I think, generally speaking, are regarded by us, by human beings, as more ideal than others. For instance, car manual, well, even more than that, tire manufacturers, for decades, when you see in a magazine or on TV or something, when you see pictures of tires, Goodyear, Goodrich, any Michelin, any tire company, when they show you a photograph of their tire, they make their tires wider than real. It's like in Photoshop, they stretch it because they think, and I think they're right, that people think that tires look cooler. They look more cool when they're fatter than real, fatter than reality. Are you with me? That's what the marketing industry has determined, and I think they're correct. I think tires. By the same token, same automobiles. When they're shooting all those commercials where the car is going around the mountain highway real fast at a curvy road through the mountains and so forth, that kind of thing. You picture what I'm talking about. They make the car appear a little bit wider than reality. They make the car appear wider because they think that people think, and I think they're correct, people think cars look more cool if they're a little bit more wide. With me? So by the same token, I think buildings, they look cooler if they're squeezed a little bit rather than stretched out this way. That's my guess, and I think that's why intuitively, very often, even if I don't think about it, it is that. No, I had to make a decision here yesterday. Did I want to continue that trend on this painting? And I decided, yes, indeed, I did. I think these buildings look a little bit more cool, interesting. They're not so stretched that people will recognize. I don't think that very few people would recognize that I have manipulated the shape of the building, but I have indeed, especially this one right here. I've squeezed it considerably. Noticeably, I don't know what is the right word. Considerably, noticeably, in there somewhere. Right in that range somewhere between noticeably and considerably. But again, not so much that I think most people would notice. Most people will not notice. A little bit more atmosphere stuff down here, I think. The sun is setting over here on our left in the west. This is one of those days. I took this picture on one of those days when the sun was setting in the west. So the sky is lighter here and darker over here. I can re-accentuate that a little bit later in the process. Okay, how are we liking that? I think we're liking it pretty well. I'm stepping back from it, not myself, to see it. Yeah, I want all this to be in cool shadow, in this, in warm, quite warm light. So I'm going to paint for just another minute with this white, and then I believe it's time to, I'll actually do a separate broadcast if that's all right. So, by the way, I am meeting with I'll say a professional advisor, someone who's going to help me with all of my social media strategies, and I have a number of changes coming up. One of the changes is not stopping. I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to tweak what I'm doing. I may change platforms, but I'll let you know if that becomes more confirmed and imminent. I won't desert you, I promise. Good news is I'm really liking this. It has a really good feel to me. The composition, I think, is the main thing that I'm liking. I'm going to stop there. Again, one of the things I'm keenly aware of right now, because I've just been teaching for 2 weeks straight. Not all 2 weeks, but over 5 days of teaching. I'm doing another one on Sunday. One of the things I'm aware, because I keep saying it to my students, if I allow you, the students, if I allow you to keep on painting until you feel like you are finished. Are you listening to this? All you painters, I hope you're listening. If you paint each phase, each stage of the painting process until you're fully satisfied, you have almost certainly done too much. You've overpainted, you've gone too far. So one of the disciplines of being a good painter is knowing when to quit. And the rule of thumb is you're always done before you think you are. So if you keep going till you really feel like you're done, you've probably overdone it. So right now, that's where I am. I could keep going with this last layer, but if I do, I'm probably overdoing it because it's actually okay the way it is. Now, of course, if you take that principle to the extreme, anybody else's mind go here? Well, if you really take that to its logical extreme conclusion, you put a complete white canvas up and say, well, I don't feel like I'm done, but Dan Nelson says I'm done before I feel like it, so I must be done. Yeah, right, okay. So, no. Nope. That is reductio ad absurdum. Reduced to the absurd, right. It doesn't work. Okay, a little break then here. Thanks for your comments. I look forward to seeing your chats in just a minute. I'm going to switch all my stuff over to oil. Can't wait. Hope to finish this painting today. That'll be a good day's work if I can get this done. Thanks for watching.